thank you for being here. We hope you can hear us. Hear, H-E-R-E, aquí, and hear, H-E-A-R, oír, are homophones. That's what we're speaking about on today's episode of
Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig.
Hello and welcome, especially if you're a new listener to the podcast. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And together with over 45 years of teaching English to students like you, we're going to help you improve your English and take everything, your grammar, your vocabulary, your pronunciation, take everything up to the next level. How are you doing, Reza?
I'm fine. Hi. That's H-I, not H-I-G-H. Hi. How are you?
I'm not very good. I had a bad week, but anyway, that's life.
What happened?
Well, I cut my finger.
Ooh.
When I was cutting bread, so I sliced the top of my nail and my finger off. That's the first thing that happened. Yesterday I had a car accident. I'm okay, but the car is really, really bad. It wasn't my fault. A big lorry, a big truck smashed into me in the road. They say it comes in threes. Bad luck. So I'm waiting for the third bad thing to happen this week. Let's hope.
What could it be?
I don't know.
So you cut the top of your finger off.
Yep.
Your car's wrecked.
Yep.
Not a great week.
No, waiting for the flat to burn down. But anyway, let's speak about English. We have some feedback from Alberto Gallego, who, if you remember, is in Australia. And he sent us an email. Reza, would you like to read it?
Yes. By the way, they say, los gallegos están por todas partes. There you go. Alberto Gallegos. It seems to be the gallegos, so go everywhere. Alberto writes, thank you because some of the subjects you talk about are really important in English culture. For example, a long time ago, you mentioned greeting cards and all kinds of cards you send to people. Yes, if you're interested in that, go to inglespodcast.com/79, episode 79.
That's when we spoke about birthday cards and Christmas cards and anniversary cards and this fetish that British people have, sending cards to everybody that the Spanish don't do very much.
I don't think Craig's exaggerating with the word fetish. We're really obsessed with it in English-speaking cultures. Alberto says, I live in an English-speaking country, Australia, so it's quite important to understand these things. Well, I've never actually been to Australia, so it's interesting to hear that they are equally obsessed in Australia with cards as they are in Britain and Ireland. He goes on, about tipping, that's tip as in propina, not tip as in pista. Tipping, which we talked about in episode 232, I live in a small village about 2 hours north from Sydney, and I haven't seen many people giving tips in restaurants or pubs. Oh, surprising, eh?
Yeah, that's surprising. But it is north of Sydney. It's not Sydney, the capital, or not the capital, the big city, Sydney.
He says, but it's very common to give a gold coin, which is a $1 coin, to the person who looks after your car during an event or for fundraising. I don't know if in the big cities they give tips. In my case, when I've gone to Sydney, I've never given a tip. I didn't realize about other customers. I think he means I didn't notice.
Yeah.
Darse cuenta. I didn't notice about other customers, but I don't think they do it. Oh, that's interesting, Alberto.
It is, and it's really interesting to get Alberto's point of view from Australia, because we spoke about tipping in the UK, in America, North America, and in Spain back in episode 232, but we didn't mention Australia, so it's really nice to hear Alberto's opinion and what he's seen in Australia. I have been there. A few years ago, I went to visit some friends in Sydney, and I didn't notice people tipping heavily in Sydney nor in Melbourne. So I kind of agree with Alberto. I don't think Australians tip very heavily, but I do remember giving a small tip for meals and for coffee. So yeah, in the big cities, I think they do tip maybe the same as British people, 10%. But if you are living in Australia, perhaps you're working in a bar or a restaurant and you have first-hand personal experience with tipping, please let us know what you see in your place of work and in your city in Australia.
As I said earlier, I've never been to Australia, so I really don't know. But I'm going to make a guess, an educated guess. I do know, I think I know, that in Australia, generally speaking, wages, salaries are pretty good.
Yes.
And if they don't give good tips, or not particularly big tips, I would imagine that's something to do with the fact that salaries are good. Because in America, it's well known that waiter salaries are very bad, very bad. You couldn't survive on the wage, the salary that you earn as a waiter. So they need tips. Maybe in Australia it's the opposite, because salaries are generally good. They don't need big tips. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that's true. But it's also quite expensive to live in Australia, especially in the big cities. So they kind of need a fairly high salary. But again, if you are living and working there and you'd like to let us know exactly what you're seeing in your area where you work, please let us know.
Okay, let's get on with business. The main theme for today, homophones. What are homophones, Craig?
Homophones, and we had two examples at the beginning of the podcast, here, H-E-A-R, and here, H-E-R-E, have the same pronunciation, but the spelling is different and the meaning is different. Another example, your and your. They sound the same, right? I mean, your and your sound exactly the same. But you can spell your, Y-O-U apostrophe R-E, which is the contraction of you-are, and your, Y-O-U-R. For example, this is your book, es tu libro. This is your phone, es tu móvil. So your as the possessive adjective. That's a homophone, your and your. Different spelling, same pronunciation, different meaning. Can you think of any more, Reza?
Yes, there are a lot of homophones in English. There are a lot of homophones in Spanish, and I imagine in all languages, but English has a lot of homophones. I imagine it's to do with the fact that English spelling is so flexible. So the letters, the spelling that you use doesn't really limit your pronunciation. You can pretty much pronounce letters the way you want in English. Well, not the way you want, but we pronounce them the way we want. There's nothing tying us down to any strict control of the pronunciation of each letter. Whereas in Spanish, you've only got a couple of things you can play with, like with an H or no H, like hola, wave, or hola, hi, how are you? Mm-hmm. Take away the H. But you can't can't do crazy things.
That's a Spanish homophone, right? Hola.
Yeah, you can't have a silent G in Spanish, but you can in English, for example. So I imagine that's why we have loads in English. And you need to know them because some of them are very common. Very common. Here's one, for example, break. If I say the word break, I could be saying B-R-A-K-E. So you're driving too fast. Hit the brakes. In other words, slow down. Yeah, los frenos. But I could be saying B-R-E-A-K, that break. For example, he'll break his leg if he jumps off the wall. Romper. So two very common words.
Yep, so we've collected some common homophones here, which we hope will help you also with your pronunciation, because when you read this as a Spanish speaker, you might say braque and briac, but the actual pronunciation of those words exactly the same. As Reza said, break and break. Let's have a break after this podcast. Let's have a break for tea. There's another meaning. That's break as the noun. Another homophone is sell and sell. Sound the same. C-E-L-L, as in a prison cell, and S-E-L-L, the verb to sell. Of course, we also have sell, the American expression for a mobile phone, cell phone, or cell. Why don't you phone my cell?
Yes, as Craig said, just to further complicate matters, the word cell, C-E-L-L, has two meanings. But we'll be talking about that in a couple of episodes from now. So the word cell is a cell phone or a prison cell. Homonyms, that will come up in another episode, but that just adds a further complication because it sounds the same as the homophone, S-E-L-L. You've got to get used to this type of thing, I'm afraid, because in English it's very common.
The next two I quite like because the spelling's very different, the pronunciation exactly the same. Flour and flour. So flour, F-L-O-U-R, harina. So the ingredient of bread, you make bread with flour. And flor, flower, F-L-O-W-E-R. There are many pretty flowers in spring in the UK. Flower and flower. When was the last time you gave anybody flowers?
Oh, about 4 or 5 months ago, I think.
Very good.
Yes,
For me, it's 4 or 5 years ago. You're doing better than I am, mate.
So far, we've talked about pairs of words, but who says it has to be limited to just 2 words? It can be a group of 3, or maybe even 4.
4.
Maybe not.
4's a homophone.
4's a homophone. F-O-U-R, 4 words. 1, 2, 3, 4. F-O-R, the preposition. You know those words. I'll give you a couple of examples. I'd do anything for you, darling. So for you, paradi, the preposition. As you know, 4 plus 4 equals 8, the number. But what about this 4? This new young star has come to the fore in his latest film. That's F-O-R-E.
Isn't that from like foreground?
Yes, words like foreground,
Before.
forearm, before. So anything like coming to the front, coming to the top. So if a new star has come to the fore, he was in the background. People didn't really know about him, but now he's come to the fore. He's at the front. So fore is often a prefix, F-O-R-E, forehead, the frente, forearm, foreground, or it can be a word in its own, come to the fore. So there are 3 words which are homophones.
And it's very useful to remember that word foreground, especially if you're taking an English test that involves describing photographs. In the foreground, I can see people having lunch. In the background, there's a man on a bicycle, for example. Foreground and background. So which is the 4 that you shout when you play golf? You go, 4! When you hit the ball, that's F-O-R-E, I think.
F-O-R-E? I think it is it? I don't know. Because it's something that's it's very rarely written. It's just normally shouted, isn't it?
Yeah.
Be careful, 4. Here comes the ball.
Here's another pair of homophones. Hour and hour. H-O-U-R, which is hora. 4 hours from now, we'll start the podcast, for example. And hour, O-U-R, nuestro, nuestra. Our podcast usually lasts about an hour.
Well, half an hour.
Well, half an hour.
We better tell you that now because you might be bored thinking an hour. I go, half an hour.
I can't listen to this for an hour.
Did you see there that Craig put the 2 homophones in one sentence? It's very common. He's not just trying to make your life difficult. Our podcast, half an hour, it is very common. And
listen to Reza and Craig. Will make your life difficult.
You've got to get used to it, you know? Our podcast, half an hour. For a native speaker, it doesn't sound strange. It's quite a normal sentence.
And what's interesting is that many people think of the rule of when to use a and when to use an. And my students say, oh, you always use an when the word begins with a vowel. No, because the word hour begins with an H, which is a consonant, but it's not pronounced. So it's the sound of the word that says if you use an or a. So it's an hour, half an hour. And those 3 words go together if you listen carefully. I don't say half an hour, I say half an hour, half an hour.
Craig, if I were to say the word night to you, what could I be talking about?
Good night, I'm going to bed. It's night time, it's time to sleep. What are you doing tonight?
I'm sure a lot of our listeners know that word. But what about a homophone? A word which is also pronounced knight, but has slightly different spelling.
King Arthur.
All right.
And the Knights of the Round Table, caballeros.
Caballeros. I had the letter K at the front. K, N-I-G-H-T. And now you've got those caballeros. And there's a famous saying that people say in English language, which is, once a night, always a night. But once a night is enough. On earth could we explain that, Greg? I'm not sure.
That's playing with words because in the first sentence, once a knight, always a knight, is speaking about knight with a K, caballero. So if you're a knight, Sir Galahad or Sir Lancelot, you are a knight of the realm of the king or the queen. And once a night is enough is possibly a sexual connotation that for me, at my age, having sex once a night is probably enough. Once a night is enough.
Or possibly too much.
So once a night, always a night, but once a night is enough.
Craig, now the next selection we've got is interesting. And we have to talk about it, even though it's going to complicate your life a little bit. This concerns individual pronunciation. And when I was checking these words, I asked myself, is it me? I'm going to check in the dictionary. And I checked, and no, it isn't me.
Before you explain, can I pour you a cup of tea?
Pour me a cup of tea. He's going to P-O-U-R, pour me a cup of tea. In the context, I clearly understand what he's talking about. Tea can be poured.
But there's only one tea bag in the teapot because we're English teachers and we're very poor.
We're poor. We don't have any money.
We can't afford 2 tea bags.
P-O-O-R, pobre. Yeah, so only one tea bag. We're poor. Or poor. Did you hear that? We didn't rehearse this, no hemos ensayado, and I hear that we pronounce it differently.
Well, you say it.
Poor.
Poor.
Little bit of difference.
There's a difference. And it's interesting because when I first started teaching and I saw this sound on the chart, there's that sound that's ua, for words like poor or sure. And I don't speak like that. So that's the sound, one sound in the phonemic chart that I don't say. I don't say poor. I say poor. Poor.
Mm-hmm. And you're quite right. According to the dictionary, which I've recently checked, most dictionaries which I checked recently just to see what's the most up-to-date explanation is that there are 2 ways to pronounce the word which are accepted.
Okay.
So P-O-O-R can be pronounced poor or poor.
So let's just check with both our accents because I'm originally from London, Reza's originally from Belfast in Northern Ireland. Let's say these 2 sentences and see how different we are or how similar we are in the pronunciation of pour. Shall I pour the tea?
Shall I pour the tea?
Do you think we're poor?
Do you think we're poor?
There's a difference. That's interesting. There's a difference with poor. Yeah.
So according to a dictionary and according to Craig, and they're both right, P-O-O-R and P-O-U-R can be homophones, but they don't have to be. They don't have to be. And for me, they're ever so slightly different.
Yes.
Because I've decided I pronounce the word P-O-O-R, poor. And the dictionary says I have every right to do that. It's one of the accepted pronunciations, poor. But the other word, P-O-U-R, I pronounce poor. So for me, they're not quite the same, although they're very close.
So let me throw one more word in there to confuse us even further. What's the name, Reza, for the foot of a dog?
For example, what does Coco have instead of feet?
Coco, what are you standing on, Coco?
Oh, he tells me he's standing on his paw.
P-A-W. Say it again.
Paw.
Paw. Paw.
Slight difference.
Slight difference in the London and the Belfast accent there, yeah.
I imagine my accent there wouldn't be accepted in the dictionary. wouldn't be. I think Craig's is much closer to what you're supposed to do. A bit longer than mine.
I don't know if it's what you're supposed to do. I think we've said this before on the podcast. Regional accents vary. There isn't a right and a wrong way, regionally speaking, for native speakers. But just be aware that these two words could be pronounced the same. These three words could be pronounced the same. Poor, and poor.
Is that your natural pronunciation of them?
Yeah, poor.
So he said all three the same.
I do.
And for me, all three are slightly different.
Now you say them.
So first we're saying pobre, poor. Then we're saying echar, el té, pour. And now we're saying la pata, paw.
Ah, paw.
A slight difference between them. Have you noticed that? Yeah?
That sounds like the American word for father, my paw.
My paw.
Hey, my paw.
Hey, paw.
Where's paw? Pa's out on the porch smoking his pipe.
Away down in Louisiana.
Where's your paw?
So,
moving on.
if Coco, the dog, had an accident, I would say the poor dog's hurt his paw. So for me, they're slightly different. The poor dog's hurt his paw. What would you say?
The poor dog's hurt his paw.
They sound the same, yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we understand each other, but they're ever so slightly different. So don't be surprised if you come across people who don't quite follow what you expect as regards pronunciation and homophones and that type of thing.
And just as a side note, which means an extra note on the side, don't worry about confusion with these words in spoken English or written English, because usually the context makes these words very clear of the meaning. So if you hear the word and you think, well, is he speaking about the paw of a dog or pouring the wine? Well, it's obviously clear from the context. You pour wine, there's no confusion, pour echar. So the context makes the meaning very clear. Let's move on to three more.
Right. I could have just said three words by saying right, because we got three different spellings. Craig, what are the different possibilities for right?
Well, as usual, Reza's right. Tiene razón. R-I-G-H-T, that's right. It's not wrong, it's right. Then there's escribir, which is with a W, that's silent. W-R-I-T-E. I'm going to write a letter, an email. And finally, R-I-T-E. For example, we speak about the funeral rites, which vary in different countries. How would you explain R-I-T-E in easy English? A funeral rite or a birth rite?
A long established tradition.
Yeah.
So the way people conduct funerals in Spain, there's a tradition which goes back a long way. There's certain things you tend to do. Certain things are expected. They are the rites. Los ritos.
The next three we have are C, C, and C. There's C-S-E-A, which is mar. When we look out the window here in Valencia, we see the sea. We see the sea, and there's another C there. Ver, S-E-E. And finally, the letter C, A-B-C, A-B-C-D.
Simple. ABC.
So we can see the sea, but can we see the sun? S-U-N.
El hijo?
El hijo, no el hijo. The sun in the sky.
El sol.
S-U-N and S-O-N. Exactly the same pronunciation. That vowel sound, sun and sun.
So if there was a boy on the beach for too long, we could say, don't spend too much time in the sun. Sun. En el sol, hijo.
Get out of the sun, son. Do you know, Reza, who the Man of Steel is?
Stalin?
Ooh. Yeah, you're right. I wasn't thinking of Stalin. I was thinking of Superman.
As well.
But yeah, Stalin as well.
I'm pretty sure that, I don't know if Stalin actually means Man of Steel, but I know that was, if you translate it, but I know that was his nickname, Man of Steel.
I think you're right. Yeah, that rings a bell. If something rings a bell, then it's familiar. You recognize it. Yeah, Man of Steel.
But what type of steel? How would we spell steel?
S-T-E-E-L. S-T-E-E-L. So steel is acero in Spanish. But there's another steel, isn't there? S-T-E-A-L. What's that, Reza?
Yes, for example, the robbers try to steal the gold. Steal, robar, steal. Same pronunciation. Homophones, steal and steal.
In a very good film called The Full Monty, which is a few years old now, but very, very funny, in the beginning of the film, they tried to steal some steel from a factory.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
They stole some steel. So another couple of homophones, weather and weather. What are the two different spellings on those two words, weather and weather?
Well, if I said to you, I don't know whether I'll go for a walk on the beach today. It depends on the weather. Well, the first weather, I don't know whether, I don't know if. So WHETHER, if. But the second weather was el tiempo. Depends on the weather. If it's going to rain or if it's going to be too windy, I might not go. WEATHER. Be careful with the word weather. It does mean if, but not always. It only means if there's a choice to make. I don't know whether I'll go to the beach or not. But you can't use whether like if in the case that there's no choice. For example, if you study hard, you'll pass your exam. You can't say whether you study hard. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in that conditional sentence. So whether only means if there's a choice to make. If not, you have to say if.
That's right. And another homophone with three possible words, I'll. So I'll can be the contraction of I will, I apostrophe double L. I will go on Saturday, I'll go on Saturday. It can also be the pasillo, the space between seats in a cinema or a church or an aeroplane, for example, AISLE. The bride and groom walked down the aisle. Or can I have an aisle seat? I don't like sitting next to the window. And also ISLE, which kind of means island, doesn't it? The Isle of Man is an island in the Irish Sea.
Or the British Isles, las Islas Británicas, the British Isles. So obviously in pasillo and isla, the S is silent in isle.
So I'll move on to homophones that are often confused. Accept and accept. Is the pronunciation exactly the same there? Accept and accept?
In reality, yes. I don't know about originally, but the way we speak these days, nobody makes a difference, I don't think.
That's true, yeah.
But there is a difference, of course, in the meaning. What is the difference, Craig?
Well, accept with an A, so ACCEPT, is a verb that means to take or receive. For example, do you accept credit cards? Or we'll accept anything you want to send us here at the podcast, except for drugs, of course, that will be illegal, but you can send us nice presents and we are happy to accept them. That's with an A. What about with an E, accept?
Well, accept, EXCEPT, means excluding. So we would accept a present, but we wouldn't accept drugs. So we accept everything except excluding drugs. Now, another classic pair which give a lot of problems is affect with AFFECT or EFFECT. So with A, affect, the verb is with A, and effect, the E with an E, is usually a noun. Usually. For example, we hope that our podcast is having a positive effect. A positive effect. That's EFFECT because it's a noun. We hope it's having a positive effect on your English.
Another example with the A, I've been sleeping badly. This is true, actually. I've been sleeping badly lately, and I think it's affecting my health. That's affect with an A. It's afectando. It's affecting my health. Reza, you're looking very nice today. I like your hair and your jumper's a very nice colour. I like the jumper you're wearing.
Oh, thank you very much. Craig's just paid me a compliment.
Pay with money?
Not with money, but with words.
Pay a compliment. That's a common collocation. To pay someone a compliment. Compliment is also a homophone. Compliment is what I just paid Reza to pay a compliment. But compliment with an E in the middle, complement, means something else, doesn't it, Reza? What does that mean? Compliment with an E in the middle.
E in the middle means it makes something better or completes it, or it goes well with something. For example, this wine complements the fish perfectly. This white wine, this fish, what better combination could there be? That's with E in the middle, compliment. Or, of course, this podcast is an excellent complement to your English studies. What could go better with your studies than adding this podcast to it?
Absolutely. Our final group of homophones, 3 we have here. 2, 2, and 2. So 2 the number, 1, 2, 3. I am speaking to you, the preposition, to, and 2 with double O, T-double-O, which means además or también. So, for example, I like tea and I drink coffee too, también.
Yes, although as we've mentioned before several times, the preposition to, to, isn't always pronounced to. If I pronounce it individually, yes, I say to, but it's more likely in the middle of a sentence that I won't pronounce it like that because it's usually not an important word. So in that case, we normally use the weak form. So we would probably say something like t would come out. For example, I'm going to the cinema. To the cinema. I'm not going to say, I'm going to the cinema. It sounds very unnatural. So the word to comes out as to, usually.
Yeah. Do you want me to make some coffee?
Oh, that's a nice idea. Are you having some?
Yeah, I might do.
I'll have some too.
1 cup or 2? 2 cups of coffee. So, are we going to do a test? I think you're going to test me. You're going to test me? We're going to test the listeners?
Well, both. Both.
Okay.
We'll test you and the listeners.
Let's do it.
Just a little test to see that you've been paying attention. Guess the homophones. Well, obviously, you won't have to guess the pronunciation because it's the same. That's the whole point. So, you'll have to guess the spelling of the other word. I'll give you an example. If I say be, well, it could be the verb to be.
Or not to be.
Or not to be. Or not that be. It could be B-double-E, which is abeja.
Yep.
Same pronunciation. Different spelling, different words, same pronunciation.
A bumblebee.
Okay, so let's test you. We'll give you a few seconds to think about it. I'm going to say one sound, but it has 2 or maybe more spellings. So what are all the possibilities? Like B, B-E, or B-double-E. Okay, so number 1, here we go, Craig. Feet. Feet.
Thinking. Well, when I think of feet, I think of the plural of foot. So I have 2 feet. 1 foot on the left, 1 foot on the right, 2 feet. So another meaning, well, there's feet, F-E-A-T, which is a really impressive achievement. For example, Reza went bungee jumping and jumped off of a bridge. It was an incredible feat. That's not saying that Reza has wonderful, incredible feet. That's saying that the activity, the thing he did, was a very impressive feat. F-E-A-T.
Number 3, Craig. No.
No, N-O is the negative. So, would you like some more biscuits? No, thank you, I'm full. But of course, there's another meaning with a K. Do you know it? K-N-O-W, to have the knowledge of something. So, you know a lot of English. And if you listen to us, you will know more English. So, no and no.
The next one is a classic which gives problems. Red.
Red is a colour, rojo, and it's also the past tense of a verb. But the problem is, when you begin learning English and you see this word in Spanish, you could read it, read, but it's read, the past of read. So, to read a newspaper, yesterday I read a magazine.
The next one, Site. Site.
Site is the location of something. There's a building site in my street. They're building a block of flats, and there are lorries, and there's cement and sand and cranes, gruas. And it's a building site. It's a location, a place where they are building. That's S-I-T-E. And of course, sight can also be vision, like what you see, your eyesight. That's S-I-G-H. When you get older, your sight usually gets worse. Your vision gets worse. It's one of the senses. So hearing, sight, taste. But there's another one, Rez, isn't there? Is there another sight?
There's a third spelling of sight, C-I-T-E, to refer to another's work or words. In the episode we did about Shakespeare, we cited the great writer. We referred to his words. We cited citar. So in English, that's also sight, C-I-T-E.
What's the last one, Reza, number 6?
The last one refers to clothes. So W-E-A-R, to wear clothes. Craig complimented me on the clothes that I'm wearing today, W-E-A-R. He said he liked them.
I do like them. So where did you buy them?
I think H&M.
H&M?
Yeah.
Okay. So there you have 2 more homophones. Where, W-H-E-R-E, the place. Where did you buy them? Where are we now? We're in Valencia. Mm-hmm. And to wear clothes. Poner, llevar, W-E-A-R, wear. Same pronunciation, different meaning, different spelling.
Well, we hope that that's got you thinking. But now it's your turn to practice your English. I tell you what, you could send us a voice message, which would be particularly impressive if you can include some homophones in your message. Send it to speakpipe.com/English podcast.
Or you can send us an email with a comment or question, although we do prefer to hear your voice messages. But the emails go to me, Craig, at inglespodcast.com.
Or to belfastreza@gmail.com.
Before we go, we'd like to say thank you to all our wonderful patrons who are supporting the podcast. The names are on the website at inglespodcast.com. A special thanks to our gold sponsor, Bruno, who offers walking tours of Copenhagen through his company, CopenhagenWalkingTour.com, and also of the favela area of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. For that walking tour, go to favelawalkingtour.com.br. And don't worry, it's safe. It's led by local guides. They know the area, and the money that you pay for the guide goes back into the community to improve their daily needs.
If you would like to join our Patreon program, why don't you have a look at patreon.com English Podcast? And for as little as just $1 a month, you can be a Patreon sponsor, and then you'll get instant access to recent transcriptions that have been transcribed by Angelica Bello from Madrid. Thanks, Angelica.
And a quick hello and welcome to our latest Patreon supporters who have joined us this month. Thank you very much to Oliver Burgos and Luis Jimenez, our new sponsors in November. Thanks for joining our wonderful group of over 60 people. It's incredible who are supporting us and getting those transcriptions to you. What's next week, Reza?
Next week, we've got how to use along and some information about reading an IELTS exam and more.
More of your questions answered. We are going to revisit the idea of homonyms, homophones, and what's the other one? Homographs. We will be talking about those in the future. But for now, thank you very much for listening to this episode. Have a wonderful week. It's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later. Tuyo. Es tuyo. It's your book. It's your car, for example.
It's not tuyo.
It's not tuyo.
Because tuyo would
Tu
be
coche.
Tuyo would be yours.
Yeah, yours. Yeah, as I said it, I realised.
It's not the pronoun, it's the possessive adjective.
Yeah, that's the mistake I made also when I put it down. Yeah,
it's tu, but it's not tuyo.
I got it confused. Okay, let me try that again.
Send it to SpeakPipe. Yeah. Send it to... Because it concerns individual pronunciation.
That's easy for you to say.
Not a good start. If I can't pronounce the word pronunciation, this is not going to go well, is it? I shall try again. Where were you?
Where
Where were you? Where were you? ¿Dónde estuvisteis? Where were you?
Where were you?
Where? Am I making a difference?
Where were you? Where were you?
Oh, again?
Where were you? No, so where were you? Where were you?
Where were you?
Were.
¿Dónde? Where?
Were and where.